Welcome to the virtual lunch. Today is Friday, May 20th, and this is virtual lunch number 563. Our guest today is Jarem. He is an account executive at NetDocuments, and this is part of our series on strategy meets technology with our friends at Affinity Consulting Group. Jarem, thanks so much for joining. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
It's a privilege. I'm super excited for this conversation. And what we generally try to do is just to give the speaker a sense of who's on. I would love to have Debbie go first because she is responsible for today's wonderful program. So Debbie, take it away.
My name's Debbie Foster with Affinity Consulting. I think I know most of you on this call. And we at Affinity work a lot with our clients on the document lifecycle. So not just document management, but how documents are created, how we can automate documents, how we collaborate on documents, how we save documents, how we secure documents, how we retain documents, the whole circle of life of a document. And we have a very strong partnership with NetDocuments. And I really do think that when it comes to strategy and technology, it's not just about firms and companies having document management. It's about them actually adopting it and all using it. So I'm really excited about this topic, and I'm excited that Jarem agreed to join us here.
So I actually came from a completely different industry. I was running an electrical distributor before this, and then one of my former coworkers was at NetDocuments, and we got talking and I ended up here and been here for 7+ years. So it's been fun to watch the company grow and expand. And I love, just talking with other people in the legal industry and getting their viewpoints. And then, like Debbie was saying, we really look at the whole kind of document life cycle. And so just trying to find ways that we can help people do their work easier, right? So it's interesting. I was just thinking a little bit about, for me, I'm one of those like DIY kind of guys, right? I do all these projects around my house. I finished my basement, did a bunch of stuff in my yard. I just got done doing a backsplash in our kitchen. And I thought about the tools, like if you have the right tools to do those things, they go a lot smoother, even though usually whatever time I think it's going to take to do on these projects, it's usually, like 4 or 5x longer than what I think. But when you have the right tools to do it, it makes it just so much easier. And so as I think about that related to the legal industry, having the right tools to help you with your documents, which is, obviously a huge part of any law firm, is really what makes life easier. And so I like to find out like, hey, what's frustrating people right now? How can we help remove those frustrations and make things easier when it comes to managing, finding your documents and everything like that. I think pretty much all firms are at least thinking about how do we get all of our software into the cloud. But now it's more of how do we really make this something that's usable rather than just a place to help you organize and find your documents. It's what tools and what solutions can we put around that to help make your work easier rather than, just a place to stick them. In the past, it was hard to make that argument. People didn't really understand, well, why does it matter where my documents are or where my software is in general? What's the big deal? And then when you had to go pretty much overnight from being in the office to working at home, then all of a sudden you realize, yeah, I need access to that stuff and I don't have access to it. How am I going to make that work? And so it helped open a lot of people's eyes to it. But I think it is important that we continue to help support those conversations. I was just watching one of the interviews you did with Debbie, I think a week or two ago, and she was talking about that change of getting people invested. And you have some of these managing partners that are just a few years away from retiring, and they're kind of like, let's put this decision off, right? And let's let somebody else deal with this later. And you're always going to have that. And so that's where we got to come in and support, like, how do we help facilitate these conversations and help those people understand that, that you may be leaving here in the next few years, but how do you set up the firm for continued success? And how do you leave that legacy of, I helped implement some of this stuff that contributed to the long-term success of the firm rather than just looking out for what's, easiest for me right now. And so we always tried to use, video calls, but you had people were hesitant to turn on their camera or didn't even know how to start the meeting. Or if they did, their, audio wouldn't work. And so because everybody got so used to doing meetings virtually, now everybody has a camera on their computer. Everybody knows how to turn on a Zoom or a GoToMeeting or a Teams meeting. And so it really kind of made it easier to engage with people because, while we couldn't get out and see people face to face and in person, you at least had the ability to see people virtually like we're doing now. It's interesting because I guess a lot of that will probably depend on the person and their personality and what matters to them. I mean, you would hope that they've developed relationships with the firms where they care about the people that are still going to be there once they're gone. And that's what I see a lot of times when I'm talking to people is they do care about their people and they want to leave, again, kind of that legacy of, hey, we did some things that are going to bless these people's lives for years to come, rather than just thinking about myself. But I think it is important, like you said, to have those people internally that are kind of champions for this. And it's interesting to see that how many different roles that can be in, right? A lot of times we're working with a CIO or an IT director or something like that. But then you start to get people in other IT roles that really, grab a hold of this and want to facilitate that change. And you also have paralegals or legal assistants or, firm administrators or executive directors. So it can really be anyone at the firm that decides, let's make some changes here and let's make this a positive. And, right now, an important thing is trying to attract and retain the right talent at a firm. And it's not even just a law firm, right? This is any company. Like we're facing it in NetDocuments too. Like, how do we attract and retain the best people? And so again, to me, if as an employee of a company or a law firm, I want to have the tools that are going to allow me to be successful, that are going to make my job easier. And if I'm at a firm that's facilitating that for me, I'm not leaving that firm, right? And it was interesting this week at ALA, I had a bunch of people that came up that are using NetDocuments, and they're like, one of them said to me, she's like, if I ever went to a different firm and they didn't have NetDocuments, I would think twice about going to that firm, or I'd at least have that conversation beforehand of, we're going to need to make some changes here if I'm going to come over. And so it's interesting how important these tools can be once somebody's experienced it and seen how much it can help make their life easier. You don't want to go back to having those frustrations you had before.
Point that Jarem just made is so important. And it's document management related, but it's also, I just very recently was at a firm and I was interviewing their newest lawyers. And one of them said, I said, what's like the craziest thing you've seen since you got here? And he said, I asked the lawyer that I work with, where do we put our time in? And he said, oh, you type your time into a spreadsheet, and then we have someone who puts the time into the system for you. And that was there. And this is a firm that had 100+ lawyers, and they were instructing all of their younger lawyers. He said, I immediately questioned my decision to come and work at this firm. And so no matter what the technology is, if we're not thinking about how to work smarter and be efficient and not have to touch things 10 or 20 or 30 times or doing things manually that could be automated, we are not going to attract the best people to our firms or our companies. So I think that's such a critical part of this.
Smaller firms generally don't see the need. The other one is probably like personal injury firms tend to just use like a CRM or something, and rather than document management.
Jarem Shook, everybody. Wonderful, wonderful conversation, Jarem. Thank you so much for doing this. Thanks to you. Thanks to Affinity for supporting our series on strategy meets technology. And I hope everyone has a great weekend.